Hey everyone, Andrew back again and welcome to another video, and for today's video I'm here with my review for Godzilla King of the Monsters, the new Godzilla movie from 2019. Went and saw this one in theatres on Friday and I definitely wanted to upload this review and share my opinions and thoughts on this movie. Okay, so before we get into the actual review, I'll just let everyone know that I'm going to try and keep this one as spoiler free as possible. Because being a new movie, I'm well aware that there's probably quite a lot of you that have still yet to see this one, and I don't want to spoil anything for you guys that haven't seen it. So there is quite a few things that I want to talk about from the movie within this review, a few things I want to address, but as I said, I'm going to try my best to keep this one as spoiler free as I can. So I'm a pretty big fan of Godzilla. However, I'm a relatively new fan to this franchise, and I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the CGI stuff. For me personally, it's definitely more about the Japanese movies, the practical effects, the men in suits, the rubber suit versions of the Godzilla films that are definitely where it's at for me in terms of this franchise. But with that being said, I was definitely still looking forward to watching this movie, and right off the bat I'll say that this was a good Godzilla film. It's definitely not one of my favourites. There's some key issues that I have with the movie, which we will get to during this review, but I thought this was a good Godzilla movie, especially for a big budget blockbuster Hollywood CGI Godzilla film. It was good. Nothing amazing, nothing great, but good. So a lot of issues that I've been hearing from other people, other reviewers, they've been saying that they didn't really like any of the characters or the storyline, that it wasn't very in-depth. Now, this is a Godzilla movie. The characters and storylines have never really been all that fleshed out in any of the movies. It's sort of been more about the Godzilla side of things, and it's definitely the same within this movie. I mean, the acting, the characters and the story are really no different to any other Godzilla movie that's come before this one, so I don't get a lot of issues in that. That was never going to have in-depth, meaningful character relationships or a really in-depth, gripping storyline. It just wasn't. But I didn't have an issue. I thought all the characters and the acting were really, really good. The two standouts for me were definitely Millie, who played Madison, the daughter. She was a key central character within this film, obviously played by Eleven from Stranger Things, and it was pretty cool to see her in a different role. She was great. And the other character that definitely stood out to me, he was my favourite character within the film, was Dr. Ishiro. He was fantastic, a great throwback to the doctor/scientist from the original 1954 film, so he was great as well. In saying that, the rest of the characters I didn't have an issue with, and the acting was what you'd expect from this type of film. The storyline I thought was decent. I liked the storyline to do with the Monarch, and there were some nice little throwbacks and little bits of backstory on all the different kaiju, which I thought was a pretty nice touch. Kind of gave people that perhaps hadn't watched any of the earlier movies a little bit of information on those, so that was pretty well done, I thought. Now we'll get on to what everyone is probably most interested in, and that is the monster action. Now, I'm not necessarily a big fan of CGI, but for the most part I thought the CGI was handled pretty well within the movie. There were a lot of really good scenes, and then there were some not so great scenes. So Godzilla, I didn't mind his design, not one of my favourites, but I already kind of knew that before going into the film. I will say though, I was very impressed with the look of Ghidorah and Rodan. I thought they were done really, really well. And there were a lot of fantastic, really epic scale shots of the size of these monsters, which I definitely wanted to talk about because I thought some of the shots were done really, really well. These monsters looked huge, and it was definitely well portrayed on screen. My standout monster was definitely Mothra. I think she was the one that was best covered within this movie. She had the best screen time. I thought And yeah, some of the shots and imagery with her character were just so beautiful, so stunning and breathtaking to look at. I was super impressed with Mothra within this film. I liked the new CGI design, and I especially loved the scenes of her at the beginning of the movie. That's all I'm going to say on that. But yeah, Mothra was fantastic. There was a lot of great lighting used in her scenes, which looked really, really good. I just wish that she'd kind of done a little bit more within the movie, and that's all I'm going to say on that. But Mothra was definitely my favourite kaiju from this movie. Now, there were a couple of other new kaiju or monsters introduced, and to be completely honest, they were kind of lackluster and forgettable for me, and they didn't really do anything, which was a shame. I kind of would have liked to seen them do a little bit more, but that really wasn't the case. So now we'll get on to the biggest frustration that I have with this film, and it was definitely the action sequences, and just not so much the sequences themselves, but the way that this movie was shot and especially edited. This movie was extremely fast paced, and I've got to say, during most of the fight and action scenes, it was very hard to keep up with what was going on because it was so chaotic with the lighting and the colour effects and everything. And there were a million different cutaways and edits which just frustrated me. I wanted to see what the hell was going on during the fight scenes, and a lot of the times there was just a million different cuts, and it kind of took me out of the scene and left me really frustrated. Don't even get me started on the amount of times where there'd be monsters fighting and then they'd cut away to the human characters and focus on what they were doing for the majority of the fight, and you'd only see glimpses of the fight in the background. I wasn't there to see what the humans were doing. I was there to see the monsters, the fighting, and yeah, 90% of the time that wasn't the case. And there were a lot of cutaways to close-ups of the monsters' faces, which really got on my nerves. It's something that was really missing from this movie, was the similar way that the fight scenes are shot in the Japanese versions. For the most part, I mean, there's different cuts here and there, sure, but for the most part, the camera's pretty much in one position, like in a wide angle, and you can see everything that's going on. They wrestle around for a bit, and the fight scenes are pretty lengthy, and they just focus on that alone. And that really wasn't the case with this film, and it was pretty disappointing. So the fight scenes, the action scenes, they look good and everything, but I just was pretty frustrated with the way they were filmed and the way they were edited especially. There were just way too many cutaways, and they didn't focus enough on some of the fights, I thought. So really frustrated there. A couple of more positive things I have to say before we wrap up this review though is the music. Now, the music score was absolutely fantastic. They play a lot of the original style music throughout the film, which is great. I really, really like that. Nice nod to the original movie and the original franchise. However, it wasn't epic enough for my liking. The music was done on a more sort of subtle scale, which was a shame, because in the other movies the music is pretty loud, it's pretty grand, it's pretty epic, and it didn't really have that feeling within this new movie. So while the music was good, I would have preferred it to be a little bit more of a grander and epic scale, so that was kind of a shame, but the music was good though. The other thing that I really liked was there were a lot of nice little Easter eggs and nods to a lot of the original Japanese, the previous Japanese movies, which was great. I really like that when the newer movies do that. It's great for the fans, I really appreciate it. However, I kind of wish they'd focused a little bit more on two key elements. Now, the oxygen destroyer was mentioned a little bit and used within this movie. That's one of my favourite things about the original film and the franchise in general. I love the whole oxygen destroyer. I think it's a great piece of equipment, a really cool sort of storyline to the films. And while it was mentioned, it was shown, I felt they could have focused a little bit more on that. And the scene, this isn't a spoiler because I'm sure most of you know about this already, but there's a nice throwback during one of the Godzilla scenes to Burning Godzilla from Godzilla vs. Destroyer. That was a little bit lackluster for my liking. I kind of wish they'd done a little bit more with that. It felt kind of underwhelming, so that was a shame. But in saying that though, there were some nice little nods, some nice Easter eggs to long-time original Godzilla fans, which was pretty awesome. So that's really all I have to say. Overall, I thought this was a good Godzilla film. Nothing amazing, nothing great, but it was pretty much what I was expecting it to be. So that being said, I would give this movie a 6 out of 10, and I definitely look forward to rewatching this one. It's definitely one that I'm going to be picking up and adding into the collection. And I think upon revisiting this at home at my own pace kind of thing, I think I'll enjoy this and get a little bit more out of this movie upon second viewing. But yeah, solid 6 out of 10 for me. I definitely recommend checking this one out, especially in theatres. If you've seen this film, let me know what you think of it in the comments section below. I hope you've enjoyed my review, and thank you for watching.